The Board of County Commissioners acts as a quasi-judicial body when it hears requests for rezoning and conditional use permits. Applicants must provide competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless time is extended by majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the March 7th Planning and Zoning meeting, and with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I could just ask if you bow your heads and take a moment of silence. Commissioner Pritchett.
Thank you, ma'am. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no minutes for approval. Under resolutions, Commissioner Pritchett? Or Commissioner Lober, I'm sorry.
Threw me off there for a moment.
Sorry.
Have one resolution today declaring this month March for Meals Month. It reads as follows: whereas on March 22nd, 1972, President Richard Nixon signed into law a measure that amended the Older American Act of 1965 and established a national nutrition program for seniors 60 years and older. And whereas Meals on Wheels America established the March for Meals campaign in March 2002 to recognize the historic month, the importance of the Older Americans Act nutrition program, both congregate and home delivered, and raise awareness about the escalating problem of senior hunger in America. And whereas the 2019 observance of March for Meals celebrates 17 years of providing an opportunity to support Meals on Wheels programs that deliver vital and critical services by donating, volunteering, and raising awareness about senior hunger and isolation. And whereas Meals on Wheels programs, both congregate and home delivered in Brevard County, Florida, have served our communities admirably for 45 years and provides a powerful socialization opportunity for millions of seniors to help combat loneliness and isolation. And whereas Volunteers for Meals on Wheels programs in Brevard County, Florida are the backbone of the program, and they not only deliver nutritious meals to seniors who are at significant risk of hunger and isolation, but also demonstrate caring, concern, and attention to their welfare. And whereas Meals on Wheels programs in Brevard County, Florida provide nutritious meals to seniors throughout the county that help them maintain their health and independence, thereby preventing unnecessary falls, hospitalizations, and premature institutionalization. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida does hereby proclaim March 2019 as the 17th annual March for Meals Month and urges every citizen to honor our Meals on Wheels programs, the seniors they serve, and the volunteers who care for them. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this, it should read 7th day of March, AD 2019. I'm getting ahead of myself. I thought it was next Tuesday, but it's not yet. So this 7th day of March, AD 2019. I'd move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Great.
All right, we have nothing on consent. Moving on to public comments, I have no public comment cards other than the items we discussed.
Oh, hang on.
Did they show up? Oh. You should have them come up before.
Yeah, do you all want to come up for Meals on Wheels? You're hiding just in plain sight, right at the front there. I'm sorry.
I apologize. Usually we have you come up first, so I didn't think anybody was here. Why not? You can come up to the microphone. Talk a little if you like.
I just wanted to say thank you for your support this month, not just this month, but for all of your support year-round. Your support of our program means a lot, not just to us, but to all of the seniors of Brevard County, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have a resolution?
I don't know if they printed, I think they were going to frame it. Do we have one? If you all want to come up to the front, we've got a framed copy of the resolution.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Next time we'll just have them come up first.
No, it's okay. Okay.
All righty, we're going to move right into public hearings, and with the board's approval, I'm going to move item number 15 to the front because the applicant's going to request that this item get tabled, and they asked, they had a compelling case as to why we should hear them first because they actually have a family thing they have to take care of. So, item 15, H15.
I'd go ahead and move the table.
Second that.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. Or do you want to set a date for tabling?
Needs to be a time certain.
Okay, where's the applicant?
You'll hear it April 4th. It's the next meeting you can hear it on.
Okay,
that
is
work for
April
them?
4th acceptable? Okay. So
All right.
you want
I'd move
modify-
to have it moved to April 4th, continued out to that point.
All right, second holds.
Okay, modified and seconded again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Great. Moving to item H1.
Item H1 and H2 are companion items, so I'll read them both into the record so you can discuss them together. H1 is a proposal by Frederick Scott and Alice Ada Louise Denlinger, represented by Joe Mayer, requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from planned industrial to residential 1. This is on a property that's 1.21 acres in size, located on the south side of Dalbora Road, just east of North Courtney Parkway. And then the companion rezoning request is to change the zoning classification from planned industrial park to RR1, and that's on the same property at the same location.
Does anybody on commission have any questions for the applicant regarding this item?
No, ma'am.
We're just waiting on you. That's okay. It's your district, so I just want to make sure that you're okay. Item H1 and H2.
With respect to H1 and H2, I'd move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
I
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
apologize. Thank you all.
Oh, that's all right.
Eden, you're comfortable with that acting on both items? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 is a proposal by Amanda LaHoy Taylor requesting a change of zoning classification from GU to AU. This is on a property that's 2.38 acres in size, located on the east side of Florida Palm Avenue, approximately 0.18 miles north of Arica Palm Street, and this is in District 1.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H4 is a proposal by William Emmons and Lori Turner requesting a change of zoning classification from RU17 to SR. This property is .81 acres in size, located on the east side of North Singleton Avenue, just north of Parker Street. This is in the Mims area in District 1.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett,
Second?
second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H5 is a proposal by James and Jennifer Mutter requesting a change of zoning classification from GU and RU113 to BU1A. This property is just east of the State Road 46 and I-95 interchange. It's 1.15 acres in size, just off of Main Street in District 1.
Okay, I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Items 6 and 7 are companion items, so I'll read those both into the record. They're a proposal by Joseph Brandon and Nikki Thomas requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from Res 1 to 2.5 to Res 1 on a property, a portion of their property that's 3.15 acres in size, located at the southeast corner of County Line Road and Dixie Way in the Scottsmore area in District 1. And the companion zoning application is actually on the full parcel that's 19.75 acres in size at the same location.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, on these two items, I'm actually going to request that we table these tonight. That's going before planning and zoning next week. So I think that needs to go be vetted through P&Z first, because I'm hearing from a lot of residents. So that's going to be my motion tonight, is to table these two
I'll
items.
second that.
Yes, ma'am, table 4.
For 6 and 7?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. I won't ask for a vote yet because the applicant, or the representative for the applicant, is at the microphone. Name and address, please.
Sure. Stuart Buchanan. My working address is P.O. Box 1545, Titusville, Florida 32781. Since the Commissioner has requested that we table the small scale, of course, already received a recommendation for approval from the County Planning and Zoning Board, but I understand why you'd like them both to be heard together. We have also presented just today to the clerk of the board additional letters of support from the neighboring property owners. So that will allow those to be made available to the County Commission. Thank you.
Now, do we need clarification? Is it just to the next P&Z meeting?
Your motion should include that they're going to the April 4th BCC
Okay.
as well.
My second stands.
Okay, great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H8 is a proposal by M&R United Incorporated, represented by Carmine Ferraro, requesting a change of zoning classification from BU1 to BU2. This is on a property that's 13.27 acres in size, located on the west side of Grissom Parkway. It's in the Port St. John area. And I think the applicant is requesting to table this item to that same April 4th date.
Yes, ma'am. So I move to table it to April 4th.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett,
Second?
second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H9 is a proposal by Barbara J. and Joseph J. Tulsky Jr., represented by Rodney Honeycutt, requesting a removal of an existing BDP. That is actually what the item came in as, and they have changed their request to an amendment to the existing BDP. And the property is 1.55 acres in size, located on the southeast corner of Tangerine Avenue and North Tropical Trail.
Okay, we have Mr. Honeycutt here, unless you want to talk before.
We can let him speak. I will have some comments on it if I may.
All right. Name and address? Name and address, please.
Yes, Commissioners, good evening. Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue in Titusville. This request is to change from BU2 with a BDP to BU2 with a BDP. The previous BDP tied it to only one use. That was a mini warehouse and lawn service. And the request for the change is for on RV sales and display, and also a retail office building. We went before P&Z and we were approved, and the first time we went before the Myra board, they tabled us. We went back before them again on February 28th, and we were unanimously approved, and we're here tonight requesting that you approve.
Okay, do you have questions for Mr.
A
Hennigan?
few questions. I don't know if you remember me from the Field
Yes,
Manor
sir.
Myra meeting. I had some items, and I just want to make sure that we're still on the same page with this. You had a sketch. I don't know if you have it available with you this evening,
No, I don't.
but, all right, essentially what we had, if I remember correctly, is we had a real small prefab building, maybe a couple hundred square feet
I
thereabouts.
think 300 square feet. yes.
300 square feet. And then adjacent to that, on the west, on the left on your diagram, there was a handicap spot. To the west of that immediately, there were 2 regular parking spots. Now, moving from that 300 square foot prefab building slightly to the east and south, the intention was to put up a larger structure that would not be prefab, it would be constructed on site.
Correct.
There was on top of that, I shouldn't say on top of that, in addition to that, there were grass areas that would be for parking for RVs in 2 separate sections of that property. Is that right?
Correct.
And then on the far east side, as a conceptual idea, but not part of the initial plan, on the southmost portion or the southernmost portion of the east side of the property, you talked about putting a 2,500 or 3,000 square foot office building.
2,600
2,600?
retail/office, yes, sir.
And then to the north of that immediately, so on the northeasternmost portion of that property, you'd have parking for that.
Correct.
But those 2 items, the parking for that prospective office building or potential office building, as well as the office building, were not part of the original plans, if I understand correctly.
That's a future
Okay.
proposal.
So in essence, what we have is we have, with the sketch that was provided, 2 parking spots on the northwesternmost portion that are unrestricted, and to the east of those immediately, there was a handicap spot. To the east of that immediately, there's a 300 square foot prefab structure that runs more or less like a rectangle farther north-south than it does east-west.
Correct.
And then to the south of that, perhaps off a little bit to the east, there was the, I guess the service building is what you all plan on putting up there?
It'd be for detailing, yes, sir.
And how large is that roughly in square footage? Just a guesstimate?
1,000 square feet, I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
It'll probably be about 45 foot long, 10 foot wide.
Okay.
So it'll be about 20 foot wide by about 45 foot long.
It's about
Okay.
1,000 square.
So, okay, that gives me an idea. When we were there, and I don't recall, because I know that some folks that had an ownership interest, I presume, were also there. One of
Yes.
them was an engineer, or both of them were
Both
engineers
of
as
them,
well?
Yes.
It's got to be interesting to work with engineers as an engineer. But I don't recall if you had answered my question at the time, or if one of the other folks had answered the question that I had at the time in front of Myra, which was whether or not the 3 existing parking spaces, the 2 unrestricted and the 1 handicapped, were sufficient with code. And the response that I recall, and correct me if you have a different understanding, was that there were only 2 required, but that's actually more than code would require.
Yes, 1 per 250, and so that we also added the handicap space.
Okay. Let me ask, if I may, Madam Chair, a couple questions
Sure.
of staff. With respect to that, Aaron, I'll bounce it to you, and if you want to send it to someone else, you have my blessing to do that, certainly. Is it accurate to say that only 2 spaces would be required, given a 300 square foot prefab building plus a 45 or so by 20 building that would also be on the same property? Would that be sufficient parking?
I don't think the concept plan correctly indicates what a full site plan will require. The parking spaces are not conditions in the binding development plan that they would be held to. It's just a conceptual vision, but I think there is a little bit of a disconnect between what our site plan code would require.
Irrespective of the number of square feet or the number of buildings, let's assume there's, just for the sake of argument for ease, we have just a 300 square foot prefab building, which we know is not what's intended to be the case. What would the minimum number of parking spaces be just for that 1 building alone?
I think the 3 that they have depicted is correct, but there are other structures on the concept plan that don't have parking associated with them.
The concept plan as was submitted and as was shown both at Myra and then also, I presume, to Planning and Zoning prior to them voting on approving this item, is it possible that that could be built as it was illustrated and still remain in compliance with the code?
I do not think so. We haven't reviewed it to that level of detail because it doesn't have dimensions and all of the square footage identified on it, but initially, at first glance, it does not appear to meet
What
code.
particular item or items cause you concern with respect to that complying or not complying with code?
Unpaved parking. We need to review that in detail, and there needs to be enough parking for the proposed use.
All right, and if I may, I just have a few general concerns with respect to this. I think obviously it's a great plan overall. in the sense that it would improve the area. But my concern is that prior to Myra approving this, and in all likelihood, and I wasn't present at Planning and Zoning when they considered it, prior to them approving it, they saw a concept plan that, quite frankly, may not be able to comply with the code. I would be very happy to look at this down the road at the next meeting, which I think we said was April 4th. April 4th, if we can get a concept plan or something that's actually able to be built, or something that's more likely to comply with the code. But I've just got concerns with respect to the parking, because the 3 spots you have seem to be the bare minimum for one structure regardless of square footage, and we're talking about that 300 square foot structure, which I'm sure they are adequate for, plus an additional structure also on there. And if the code doesn't allow us to consider unpaved parking as parking spots, I just don't want to take an area that's already got massive parking problems and exacerbate those problems. If you're able to satisfy staff that it complies with code, by all means, I'd be thrilled to put this thing forward, and I think that's something that in the end is going to be how it goes. But I think given that concept plan that was in all likelihood part of the basis that it was approved unanimously at both of the other bodies, in all likelihood doesn't comply with respect to the parking requirements, I would ask that you all consider tabling it for 1 month period of time until the concerns of staff can be addressed. And at that point, I'll be happy to be the guy to move to approve it.
So my request would be to move it forward tonight. And the reason being is that we cannot get a permit for them to do anything on the site until we get a site approved by Brevard County. And so the second structure does not have any walls on it. It's just a cover for the RV detailing. And I don't think the parking will be required for that, but if there is, then pay parking, then we have to provide it, or we can't get a permit and do anything. And what we submitted was just a conceptual so that Myra could see what we were doing on site. We didn't mean that we could only have that many parking spaces, or we would only provide that. We certainly understand we have to provide the code, and we can't get a permit without it.
And let me, if I may, just bounce back to staff again. If the building isn't walled off, would that necessitate additional parking spots? Because I just don't know the answer to that.
If I may, Commissioner, so what we have for the parking requirement for this would be 1 space for every 500 square foot of floor area, plus 1 space for every 2,500 square foot of display area. So the code also has a minimum parking requirement of 3 spaces, 2 regular and 1 handicap, and that's probably where the 3 spaces that Aaron spoke to earlier. So in this case, anything that is utilized for the sale and the prep or detailing of those vehicles would be at 1 to 500. Anything that's for the display of those vehicles would be at 1 to 2,500. So that's how we would calculate the parking, and that would be demonstrated by the plan that they provide and in the area that they show. So in what they've given us from the concept plan, we don't have those areas dimensioned. I believe it's just kind of it's really more of a conceptual, this is what they're intending to do, and I don't believe that in no means was it intended to satisfy the site plan requirements of our code.
Okay, just to follow up with respect to that, do you foresee there being any difficulty were we to move this forward tonight to ensure that they have adequate parking throughout the remainder of the process where it doesn't involve the commission?
That would depend on the development program. I mean, they would be able to, it's kind of, they kind of control the amount of parking that they're going to be required to provide by the intensity of the development, right? So if they were able to, if they get into a situation where they don't have enough parking, then they can either reduce the amount of development space to get there. We also have mechanisms in our code that would allow for some reductions or some other considerations if they were to do some enhanced landscaping or save some vegetation on the site. So there's some mechanisms. I'm comfortable that the site plan process would account for the parking concerns. If we ran into an issue where we couldn't satisfy it, then there is a waiver process that would allow it to come back before the board if we couldn't satisfy with any of the administrative remedies that we have.
But overall, I'm sorry to try to box you into a yes or no, but overall, you appear comfortable then?
I believe that we can satisfy the concerns through the site plan process.
Well, in that case, obviously, I'll wait to hear the rest of public comment, but I'm not as opposed to it as I was when I came in here.
Thank you.
Carrie Wilmer?
He pretty much answered. The only reason we made it out the way we did.
You got to come up to the mic. I'm sorry, just,
I've been in the RV industry for 25 years, and the reason we laid it out was in order to get our dealer's license. We were actually only required to have one wheelchair spot and one parking spot based off of the floor plan. We will have ample parking when the building's put up. That was just a rough sketch because they literally won't let us move forward until you guys let us move forward, so.
okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
just less concerned now that I've heard from staff that the issues that I foresaw maybe being a problem down the road will be caught in the process. So I'm not trying to stifle development by any means, but I just want to make sure.
It'll look beautiful when we're done, I can assure you
Oh,
of
I think it will be
that.
gorgeous, too. I think for that area especially, it's going to be a good project.
Absolutely.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Barb Telsky?
I think everything that I wanted to talk about got resolved, so
Oh, okay.
if you have any other, do you have any other questions?
No,
Appreciate it.
All right.
thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, I'd move to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober,
Second?
second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Congrats.
Good luck.
Items H10 and H11 are companion items. The proposal is by John L. Jackson, trustee, represented by Bruce Moya, requesting a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment on a piece of a greater parcel that's 3.28 acres in size, located on the north side of State Road 46, just west of the I-95 interchange. And then the rezoning request is on a greater piece of land that's 16.4 acres in size at the same location.
I'm assuming that nobody's had any disclosures, otherwise you guys would have spoken up, right?
I think I had a written disclosure for the prior item, and I also referenced it during the conversation about having been present when they presented to Myra. But apart from that, nothing.
Okay. All right. All right. Some of us turn them in, some of us disclose it during the meeting, so we're just trying to work. All right. Great, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Bruce Moy with MBV Engineering. Really excited tonight to bring you this project. It is a 16-acre travel center on State Road 46. We're asking tonight for a rezoning and a comp plan amendment. Basically, this piece of property has 3 different zonings and 2 different land uses, so we'd like to consolidate that into one land use and one zoning, which part of the land has both some existing zoning and existing land use that we're asking for. We just want to have it for the whole parcel so that we can build this travel center. This travel center will consist of a convenience store and food service with a tire care center and truck parking, and a future hotel. It complies with the MIM small area study where they wanted to consolidate commercial activities at this area within the location. This project is approximately $12 million project. It should bring in excess of $500,000 in fuel taxes to Brevard County on an annual basis. It'll employ 50 to 60 people. We are working with the DOT to address any traffic issues. We've done an intersection and road traffic analysis. We've done a signal warrant analysis. And so we feel that we're addressing any infrastructure issues. There is water and sewer to the property that's available. So we're really excited about this project. We hope the county is too. I'll save any time for rebuttal if there is any, or any questions that you have.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, ma'am. This is such a good project, and MIMS is just a good fit, and I really thank you guys for working on this and bringing it up into that area. I think it's going to greatly enhance the city of MIMS. Well, it's not a city, kind of thinks it is, but I would like to go ahead and approve items 10 and 11. Can I do those
Second.
together? Okay.
Motion to approve items 10 and 11 by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item H12 is a proposal by the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners, represented by Tim Laurie, requesting a change of zoning classification from BU1 and IU to GMLH, and to remove an existing BDP on the IU portion of the property. This property is 6 acres in size, located at the southwest corner of Pineda Causeway and the FEC Railway.
Kind of skeptical about the petitioner in this case.
I don't see any lights. Can I get a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Smith,
Second?
second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H13 is a proposal by James M. and Joanne M. Thomas requesting a change of zoning classification from RR1 and BU1 to SR. The property is 1.25 acres in size, located on the west side of Wickham, just north of Pineda Plaza Way. Unfortunately, this applicant has never appeared at any public hearing so far, and the P&Z recommended denial accordingly. So I don't suspect he's here tonight either.
So you need a motion to deny?
Should we check if they're here?
Yeah, I don't have any cards.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Second?
Motion to deny by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H14 is a proposal by Alberto and Bibiana Roman, represented by Ralph Kennedy, requesting an expansion of a CUP for alcoholic beverages for full liquor for on-premises consumption in conjunction with a restaurant in the BU1 zoning classification. You guys last saw this item on February 7th, and they've provided us additional information since then.
Okay, we have the applicant here. Want to hear from the applicant?
Sure, can I just chat with him briefly?
Yeah, do you want him to present first?
Yes, I think I may
Okay.
be able to fix it here. Howdy.
Aye.
I just want to say I appreciate your coming out and voluntarily allowing this to be tabled the last time. I looked and I did see that you got some parking agreements from some of your neighbors, and given that, coupled with the board's action on the other item that was on the prior agenda, I don't have the concerns that I had at the last meeting. So unless you feel like saying your piece, I'm going to move to approve it.
Thank you.
I have a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. That sure made it easy.
We did 15, so I'll move on to 16. Item H16 is a proposal by Douglas and Cindy Robertson, represented by Bruce Moya again, requesting transmittal of the 2019-1.1 large-scale comp plan amendment to change the future land use designation from residential 1 to 2.5 to residential 1. Just to remind the board, this is a large-scale comp plan amendment, so this will come before you twice. If you were to move it forward today, it'll come back a second time for adoption. And the property here is 20.39 acres in size, located on the southwest corner of Fleming Grant Road and Seabird Lane.
I have a disclosure, too.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, with respect to the side bet with Mr. Moya, let's see here, actually I have a few different disclosures. On March 3rd, 19, my office received an email from Henry Beck expressing concerns about this. Same date, March 3rd, we received an email from Ann Briggs urging commissioners to please vote against it. The following day, March 4th, we received an email from Micco Homeowners Association opposing any change of the future land use map. 2 days subsequent to that, on March 6th, we received an email from Don Courier expressing opposition, and it appears on February 21st, we received an email from Mitzi and Jean Plunkett seeking to deny. I've also met with Mr. Moya, and I believe there was an email that was sent subsequent to our meeting with respect to this item, so it's certainly heard thoroughly on this item from every which side.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. I've included my disclosures with the exception of one that I received yesterday. That email was from Kim, no last name given. However, the address was CURRIERDN@yahoo.com. She opposed the comp plan amendment.
Okay, I'm sure we've all received many of the same emails, which are technically all part of the public record, so I won't go through my emails as well. But I want to disclose that I spoke with Mr. Moya on February 28th regarding the project, and you offered some information, and I asked some questions about the number of of units per acre and that sort of thing. And I also received some correspondence from Alan Metzger, who's a property owner in the area, and there was a small conversation that occurred there, and he was concerned about the initial belief that it was 4 units per acre, and that's the discussion that we had. And I believe we have Commissioner Pritchett and Commissioner Smith, so. All right. Applicant. Give your name and address.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bruce Moy again, MBB Engineering at 1250 West Oak Alley Boulevard in Melbourne, Florida. I'm hoping that I can save everybody a lot of time here. Obviously we had a meeting with P&Z and there was a lot of discussion, but I just really want to remind the board that all we're asking for tonight is to allow this to be forwarded to the state to see what they have to say about this. We're not asking for any approvals. We're not asking for any concessions. We're not asking for anything except for simply to forward this to the state to see what their comments are as far as the comp plan amendment that we're requesting. Now, you did mention, and it's true, that originally when this advertisement went out from the county staff, it mistakenly said we were asking for 4 units to the acre. That was not what our request was. We're only asking for Res 1, which is 1 unit to the acre, which is very compatible. So I think you might hear a lot of testimony from some of the residences. Whether they apply here or not, whether they're true or not, I don't know if it really matters. I think today we're talking about, can we submit this to the state so the state can give you your comments of what they think if this is compatible or not. And if we're just talking about compatibility, which I really think is all we're talking about here, if you look at your map, out of the 77 lots that are within 1,000 feet of this property, over 50% are an acre or less, and that's what we're asking for, and over 25% are a half acre or less. So to ask for 1 unit to the acre, I think is compatible. So I believe that's really the topic of discussion here. And then we'll come back after the state has their input so we can talk about other things like wetlands and protected species and floodplains and traffic and all those things. But tonight all we want is to transmit to the state so the state can give you their input. And then we'll start talking about all those other issues. So that's all we're asking for tonight. So I'm going to retain the rest of my time for rebuttal, and unless you have any questions.
No questions yet?
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Mr. Ken Chapin?
Hi.
Name
My
and
name is
address?
Ken Chapin. I live at 9880 Oak Trail in Micco. I've been a developer and homeowner in Micco for 40 years. I've been fortunate enough over the last 40 years to be able to develop a few properties in Micco. I developed Oak Trail in 1986, and the zoning at the time was half-acre zoning, and that's what I did. I made half-acre lots down Oak Trail, and then 2-acre property where I presently live on the river. And then in 1990, I was fortunate enough to develop a property right next to the 20 acres in question. And at the time, the comp plan changed to 2.5 acres. I developed the 11 acres to 2.5 acres as staff directed me to do. And about 10 years later, I bought another 26-acre parcel in our neighborhood, and staff directed me at the time to develop it to 2.5 acres. That's what I did, and I sold the lots, and everything worked out fine. But I come before you today to express my opposition to the result of the LPA meeting with respect to the possible elimination of the requirement to adhere to Brevard County Comprehensive Land Use Plan that has been in existence since 1988 for this 20-acre property that borders the Sebastian River. The land use change is being pursued through Brevard County that would change the current planned use comp plan from the property along Fleming Grant Road that borders the Sebastian River to retain the zoning of RU 113 as claimed by the owners at the LPA meeting. I was, quite frankly, surprised and astounded by the fact that LPA staff recommended a deviation to the comp plan that has been in place since 1988, and it's been in place since 1988 and enforced since 1988 to allow 1 unit per 2.5 acres. I believe it goes without saying that varying the land use significant increase in density along the river area, given the existing environmental conditions along our riverways, could very well cause additional adverse effects. The owner of this property, which was purchased just a few months ago, must have done his due diligence at the time and known that the comp plan called for 1 unit per 2.5 acres. The basic issue of the folks at the LPA was the owner-developer was unwilling to commit to something more conducive to the neighborhood rather than comply to the land use plan. We believe smaller homes on less property is detrimental to the environment. That situation is something I believe the county is trying to improve with the current land use changes from decades ago that was made along the Sebastian River to make it 2.5 acres to protect the river. I don't have anything against development. I develop myself. I believe development is good for the county and the environment when the long-term plans are adhered to. The Brevard County Commission last week approved a sales tax to increase 0.5% to funnel monies to remove muck from the Indian River Lagoon and things to help the Indian River Lagoon in general. Increased density certainly does not help the cause. In the grand scheme of things, there are a few non-conforming lots, home built in the 50s and 60s, that make the new request consistent with the entire area. And the owner is going to try and convince you that because these lots that were developed in the 50s and 60s are compatible, but things have changed since the 50s and 60s. We've learned a lot about the environment since then. The neighborhood believes the county put the 1988 comp plan in place to minimize the impacts on the waterways, and that plan should simply be enforced. I, along with the Micco Homeowners Associations, and I think you have a map there that we gave you that's colored out that shows you the 2.5 acre parcels and the smaller lots around it.
Okay, sir, your time is up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ann Briggs?
Hello, my name is Ann Briggs, and I live at 9735 Fleming Grant Road in Micco. And I would like to register my opposition to the petition to amend the comp plan to change the future land use for this property. People have moved to this area because it's beautiful, it's quiet, it's full of wildlife, and it's right on the Sebastian River. I don't live on the Sebastian River, but I use the Sebastian River for kayaking and enjoyment. And I was really dismayed to see that this designation to go to one house per 1 acre, the damage it could do to the Sebastian River and to the lagoon just by having septic tanks. And no matter how modern the septic tanks are, it's going to overflow at some point, there's going to be some horrible accident, and it's going to cause a lot of damage. And I think that that's really the priority. The density is also an issue, and I know that we're going to be discussing this again apparently. So please consider all these issues that are important to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Beck.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Micco Homeowners Association. My name is Ted Beck. I live on 9735 Fleming Grant Road. And it's a Micco Homeowners Association. We're against we oppose the request to change the land designation. Direct access to the Sebastian River, which flows into the Indian River Lagoon, and taxpayers are spending millions of dollars every year on undue damage development has done to the delicate ecosystems. The density increase will increase the stormwater runoff, septic leakage, pesticides, fertilizer into the Sebastian River directly, and damaging the ecological balance and further injuring the Indian River Lagoon as a result. This property on Fleming Grant Road is in an AE flood zone with a high probability of frequent flood waters carrying the above-mentioned runoff materials into the St. Sebastian River. Robinson property requested increase in density is not compatible with the current FLUM designation for this area. Development in 1955 on Mockingbird Lane should not be used as a standard density today. The density increases will set a precedent for every other developer on Fleming Grant Road. Fleming Grant residents must go through 2 other neighborhoods to reach US Highway 1. The area of Micco does not have the infrastructure to support that much density and traffic increase. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Spar.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mary Spar, 825 Clifton's Cove Court, Cocoa. I'm going to give you the perspective of someone who does not live down there. I look at the projects that we are funding with the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project plan, and I see that down in that area we have the Micco Sewer Extension Project, which was one of the first ones that was considered, very favorably, by the way. This cost $1,977,345 according to the latest project plan update, which you recently approved. And then there's the Fleming Grant Biosorption Activation Material Stormwater Project, which, according to the project plan documentation, costs $17,346. Last year, the Citizen Oversight Committee had discussions on whether land use changes and rezonings just were counter to any efforts they could make. So we see that we're pouring almost $2 million right now. I mean, I know that the sewer extension project is in final design and state environmental and transportation permitting, but we're pouring almost $2 million down into that area. And it just seems like a bad idea. I mean, it's counterproductive. Do we really care about our lagoon and fixing it? Or are we going to give the applicant added density capability? The applicant already has the ability to build 8 units on this property. And with all the constraints and environmental aspects to this problem, the fact that there's no water or sewer there, it just seems like we should just stick to what he has right now. He has no legal right to any more than he has now. And finally, I looked at this on Google Earth. I must say, I was taken aback. I said to myself, this is the land. When I saw that treed portion on Google Earth and the island right outside it on the St. Sebastian River. Please do the right thing. Do not transmit this comprehensive plan amendment.
Commissioner Lober?
I have a question for Attorney Bentley. Obviously, we have to consider, and we're expected to consider, the adjoining property and how compatible what's being suggested is. To what degree is it permissible and appropriate for us to consider the impact that the changes would have on the lagoon or could have on the lagoon?
Well, it's a comprehensive plan amendment, so it's legislative in nature, so you can consider all those things.
Thank you.
Robin Carroll? Okay, we can share.
But you can share. Thank you.
My name is Robin Carroll. I live at 9575 Fleming Grant Road. I am here to oppose Brevard County amending the comprehensive plan for the 20-acre parcel of land. The property is located directly on the Sebastian River, which flows into the lagoon. Right now, the health of our lagoon is critical. Thousands of dollars are being spent to help correct the problem. Florida Senator Mayfield just filed Senate Bill 1758 to curtail the number of septic tanks systems on our waterways. The city of Sebastian has just received a grant to assist homeowners on their side of the Sebastian River to switch from septic to wastewater. My main points are twofold. This increase in density will negatively impact the stormwater runoff. Our area already has some unresolved issues that may be exacerbated with this proposed development. This property is high, and it currently drains onto Mockingbird Lane. If you look at picture 13, it shows the difference in the height of the backyards on the east side of Mockingbird. Pics 1 and 2 shows the uneven flow of stormwater down Fleming Grant Road. This uneven stormwater was never really a problem until I built my home in 2002. The county directed the size and the elevation of the culvert in my drive. My culvert is currently too small to handle the amount of stormwater flow that comes from the north. Pics 3, 4, and 8 show my driveway and how it acts as a dam. On one evening on November 21st, Brevard Deputy Sheriff Ron Carpenter knocked on my door to tell me I had a problem. He said my culvert must be blocked. All of my neighbors are complaining up the road. So I took him down in the pouring rain and showed him and put a flashlight on this low side of my driveway to show you that it isn't blocked. Pictures 2 and 7 were taken the next morning. That one's on the high side, and you can see where the water has pooled, and one's on the low side, and you can still see the water flying through the culvert. Pic 5 is the east side, just north of the 42-inch culvert that goes under Fleming Grant Road to the stormwater basin. Pic 6 and 9 show no maintenance to the ditches going directly into the basin. The basin is known to overflow, and you may have heard from a neighbor, Mr. Pete Ebbett. On the second page, you'll see pictures 17, 18, and 19, which shows the aftermath of the basin flooding in his yard. Pic 14 is just one of the many gopher turtles that reside on this 20-acre parcel. My second point is, if you allow this change in the comp plan, how many more homes can be jammed into half-acre lots on the undeveloped part of Fleming Grant? With Pond Bay encroaching on Micco Road with Emerald City, traffic is bound to increase on Fleming Grant. I know we can't stop development, but with the proposed increase in density, there will be that much more runoff. How much stormwater can the area handle? We can barely handle what we have now. Please do not allow this change to the comp plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Lober?
Question for staff. Do we know, and if you don't know, that's fine as well, but do we have any idea as to whether or not we're near capacity on that road?
For traffic?
Yes.
Let me give me just 1 second.
Thank you.
And I'll get that answer. I know the answer is no, but I want to get the numbers for you.
But you're confident in that?
Confident, yes.
Okay.
The roadway today is at 12% of capacity, and it would raise it to 13.
Thank you.
Did you want to come back up?
Just over 12.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was like 12:38.
38, yeah. 13.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to come back. I guess I'll kind of defer back to the opening statement that we listened to before the meeting started. I didn't see anybody here that is an expert on drainage, land use, or traffic, or septic tanks, or anything like that. So I don't know if you can consider their testimony. I'm sure it was emotional, and sure it was interesting to hear that there was a lot of problems down there, and it seems like it's an existing problem. I think a lot of the people here, obviously the one lady said that she caused a drainage problem. Everybody that's on the river that has a septic tank is part of the problem. We're proposing to meet all the standards, to provide for stormwater treatment, to provide for upgraded septic standards, not to continue to pollute the river as is what's happening now. One guy was right. A lot's changed since the 50s and 60s, and a lot's changed since the comp plan was put into place in 1988. Your land development codes are severely strict when it comes to developing in floodplains, which this property is not entirely in a floodplain. That was an incorrect statement. It's partially in a floodplain. So there's limitations on development in the floodplain. There's limitations on development in wetlands. There's limitations on where you can put a septic tank near the river. There's limitations on how much stormwater you can discharge into the river, how much you have to treat, where it goes, the fact that you can't put it onto the neighbors, the fact you have to contain all your stormwater, you have to treat it, you have to meet all the standards for the county, the St. John's, and actually do a real development. Or we could do what everybody else did and just clear cut the property and put septic tanks on it and build 8 lots. I don't think that's what you want. And I don't even think that's the point. The point tonight is, what does the state have to say about this? You don't have all the evidence yet. You don't even know what the state's going to say. So without giving us any entitlement or any approvals, all we're asking for is for you to get the whole story, and part of that story is what the state has to say. So please, just allow this to go to the state so we can get their feedback so you can have a clear picture on what's going to happen at the next step. This is just step 1 of a very long process. So if you would, please move it forward to the state, hear what they have to say, see what their concerns are, and then we can deal with all that when it's appropriate, which is when we go for the BDP and talk about development standards. So any other questions? I'm happy to entertain those.
No.
No. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner? Commissioner Tobias, this is your district.
I'm aware.
Do you have any comments or input? Do you want the rest of us to talk first? It's up to you.
No, absolutely. I can't support this request because it's not consistent with the future land use map. There's no compelling reason to essentially carve out an exemption for this developer. However, and that's a big however, I think commissioners should vote their own conscience on this. If the board disagrees with me and votes to approve this, and in my career as a policymaker, I try never to do this. When I go down on a vote, I try to never make stipulations on those that go up. But I would ask that we make sure that this development would have advanced septic systems as a precursor as they move forward. But Mr. Moya was correct. Should this make it through, these homeowners would certainly have the opportunity to come back and talk about this in the future. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Madam Chair.
The rest of the commission? Anybody else? Okay, nobody wants to put a light on. Oh, now you're going to? Okay. Well, I'm going to talk anyway because I started. You know, I looked at this area, and I mean, not recently, but I've been out that way. I don't think, personally, I think, isn't it already required in our code that they have advanced septic systems anyhow?
The nitrogen reduction overlay would touch a portion of this property at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and I think that Mr. Moya reiterated that tonight, and this would be a commitment associated with the rezoning request. He committed to building the advanced septic systems for all of the parcels if this were to move forward.
Right. And I personally, you know, just judging, I live on an acre, so I know how big of a parcel that is. I don't have a problem sending it to the state, you know, to get their feedback, because ultimately it's got to come back to us anyway for us to approve any type of plan. But I would, you know, if ever I was to support this as we go further down the line, it would have to be at least at an acre, you know. I think, again, initially people got riled up because I kept, you know, the emails I was getting was 1 unit per 7,500 square feet. It was 4 units per acre, 4 units, and that's what we were hearing over and over again. So I think people got impassioned about some really tight, high-dense development. But I don't believe that an acre per unit is unreasonable, especially given that it's not all riverfront property, and we would make sure that we were responsible with the advanced septic systems, and we could make that part of the plan. But we're not there yet, so it's hard to talk about conditions now. But at least me personally, I don't have a problem sending it to the state to get their feedback. They may come back and say, this is a really rotten idea, you know, this is not conducive, this is, et cetera. But then I think we go from there, because then at least at that point we have all of the information to make a better, more educated decision, rather than just tell you no. Commissioner Lober?
Question for Ms. Bentley, or actually for staff, whoever feels like jumping on it. If we send this to the state, are we losing any right in terms of being able to turn this down at a future point in time, if the comments come back and they're unfavorable?
Well, if they're unfavorable, you would have an uphill battle.
In terms of being, I'm talking about being unfavorable for development.
Well, you would still have the ability to deny if you chose to do so. Your standard of review wouldn't change. It would still be the fairly debatable standard. The difference between a comp plan amendment and the rezoning, you have to have substantial competent evidence, and so that's a higher standard than you do for a comp plan. Comp plan, you can have a fact on one side and a fact on the other, and it'll be fairly debatable and it can be upheld. So you're kind of in a lighter level of review here. But the short answer to your question is no, not really. You would not be impaired by going to the state.
Thank you. And may I have just one more for Mr. Moya?
Sure.
And I'm just going from memory here from the sketches that I've seen previously. About, and I'm guesstimating here, maybe a fifth of the property is on the floodplain. Is that right, more or less?
More or less, yeah.
I know it's kind of a wavy line on the southernmost portion. Down the road, do you think it would be something that your client would be amenable to considering as far as that portion that's on the floodplain that you may not be able to develop anyway, instead of just flooding that with St. Augustine grass and contributing more to the lagoon problem? Would they consider something along the lines of a living shoreline or some sort of native species so that we don't have more problem than need be?
Yeah, more than likely, and we haven't done the analysis yet, but we believe that the wetland line is going to probably follow that floodplain line, and the county has very strict wetland regulations, which we're going to talk about later. So we would be prohibited from even going there and clearing it or doing anything to it. So we would definitely, you know, adhere to your very strict guidelines on floodplain management and wetland mitigation and vegetation. So we wouldn't be going in there, obviously, and clear cutting, especially if it was wetlands.
And I'll just put it out there as well, just so everyone's on the same page. I will tell you, if you come back with lots that are less than an acre, I'm probably not going to be in favor down the road.
Understand.
So I'm just putting everyone on the same page, and I don't want anyone to have an impression that with this being greenlit potentially, that means come back and give us quarter acre, half acre, 3/4 acre lots.
Just so you know, because there's no water and there's no sewer in the area, the state would mandate a minimum of 0.5 acres. So we couldn't get less than a half an acre. It would be against the standards. So
Okay.
we could, because the zoning is incompatible with the land use, so we're trying to make the land use more compatible, we would have a minimum of a half acre, maximum could be as big as we want. Well, obviously, we'll be discussing what that minimum would be, because we got to make sure we can have enough lots to make it developable. Will we have half acre lots? Probably not, but, will we have all 1 acre lots? I don't know, but we would definitely, that's room for discussion, to make it, obviously, we want to make it a good development, but we also want to make it a viable development, because, if the lot count, because of the wetlands and the floodplain prohibits us from getting a lot count, then, the project isn't viable. So we would be definitely amenable to discussions about lot size.
I appreciate
Just
that.
so you
And
know,
normally-
half acre is absolute minimum.
As I'm sure you probably picked up on, normally I'm one to go along with the commissioner in whose district the project falls. I think I have in every other instance up till this point. But this is a little bit different in my mind in the sense that we're asking for more information. I will tell you, when we do get that additional information, if I'm equivocal, I'm going to go the way he goes on this.
Understand.
Just to put it out there, I'm going to support sending it, but that doesn't mean that I'm thrilled
No,
with
thank
it, or
you,
I'm a solid yes down the road.
Yeah, and we'll be negotiating a BDP, and we'll have all that stuff established, so you're happy, everybody's happy.
Thank you.
And I just want to let the public know, we just got a public comment card, but public comment's already been closed. This is the applicant rebutting the public comment, so we've already been through public comment, and that portion is closed. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, my only hesitation is also that for sending it would be that Commissioner Tobias is hesitant, but since it's going to come back, just so you know that when you come back and you're ready to make a move later, you're going to please need to get with your commissioner of your district. And I've just learned, being in my district, you really got to work through all these things diligently. So that's going to carry a heavy weight when we come back also of what that commissioner's opinion is. But there are pros and cons to this. One of the pro is that there is no stormwater on the whole area right now. And when you bring this in, you're actually going to develop some stormwater storage situations, which is going to be a benefit. So I'm interested in what you come back with later, but I think that it's probably fair sending this to the state at this point and doing that portion.
All right, can somebody have a motion?
I make a motion to send this to the transmittal.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2 with Commissioner Tobias and Smith and the nays. Okay, item 17.
And I've got a disclosure on this as well.
Okay.
With 17. It looks like on February 19th was the date I'd met with Mr. Moya to discuss this particular item, and I believe there was also a follow-up email on this as well from Mr. Moya.
All right, I think I spoke with Mr. Moya on this a while ago for about 3 minutes, but I've disclosed that as well, and I think that was actually at the same time on the 28th or so.
I did also.
Okay, and Commissioner Pritchett as well.
Good evening. This is an appeal of staff's interpretation of the Wetlands Protection Ordinance and policies. The appeals of staff's interpretation of wetland impact, and the applicant states that a no net loss scenario may be achieved by relocating existing wetlands on site. Our stance is that this approach addresses wetland area only, not the mitigation of wetland function. The Wetland Protection Ordinance prohibits development in functional wetlands except where specifically allowed within code. The residential subdivisions are permitted to have 1.8% of the project area in wetland impacts. Both the comprehensive plan and the code require no net loss mitigation as determined by the state's Uniform Mitigation Assessment Methodology, also known as UMAM. This is a multifaceted wetlands function assessment and is quantified through vegetation, soils, habitat, hydrology, and the surrounding landscape. The wetlands serve critical functions in the community: flood storage, groundwater recharge, sediment, nutrient, and pollution filtration, including denitrification, wildlife habitat, and erosion control. So mitigation must offset the losses of the wetland function, not merely the area of the wetland. So in order for the relocation to be true mitigation, you must create a new wetland that provides the same functions as the functions of the wetland that was impacted. The wetlands here at this site are primarily freshwater marshes. That's indicating they're holding stormwater and not groundwater. They contain a wide variety of mature oaks, pines, and hollies. And it would probably take decades to establish this kind of an ecosystem, and it would require continued monitoring and maintenance to ensure its success. Lastly, we do have another unknown with the site, which is the stormwater. We don't, as I said, it's freshwater marsh, so it's probably holding stormwater. It's definitely receiving water from the surrounding area. We don't know if there's a legal positive outfall, so there is a concern with the stormwater as well. So ask the board for your direction on this.
Commissioner Lover?
Just, I'd ask if you have a chance, Mr. Moya, during the time you're commenting, if you see fit. One of the concerns that I had following our conversation about this item and in conjunction with speaking with staff pertains to the difference in simply looking at and evaluating either area or volume of a particular wetland and duplicating that area and or volume elsewhere, and then also looking at function. And my concern is one of whether or not what you're planning on doing would really duplicate the function. In discussing it with staff, it was brought up, among other things, that they have decades of oak and pine and all sorts of varieties of trees and plant life that might be difficult to duplicate either in the same volume or the same area. If you could address that to some degree, I'd appreciate it. The other concern that I have, and I think everyone's probably picked up on the fact that I don't really respond well to folks threatening lawsuits against the county, and typically that's the best way to ensure that I don't support that particular point of view. So if someone wants to try using some reverse psychology on that basis, it might be successful, I don't know. I've not been threatened with any lawsuits on this, but I do have some concerns that there may be some substantial cost of defense if we were to get sued on this. That's not the be-all and end-all for me, but it's a concern that I do have, and it to at least a degree, is something that I can't get out of my mind, just due to how novel this is. I give you incredible credit for coming up with something as unique as this, and I really do mean that in as positive a way as possible. But my real concern, again, if you could just address and touch on function rather than just on volume and area, I'd appreciate it during the 15 minutes that you have.
Okay. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Moya. I know you're going to present in a minute, and I have tried to figure out a way to make this work in my head, and I spent a lot of time with staff, and I got your input. And at the end of it, they're high-quality wetlands. I don't think you're going to be able to actually, even if in the best scenarios, mitigate all that. So when you're done speaking, and we'll hear what you have to say with this, but I did come up with an option for you that I think will work. In that area, there's great growth coming of population. It seems to where all the Cape workers are trying to settle in. And all of the multifamily and the apartments in the area, even the new ones that have been built, they're full. So I think if you would consider doing a denser product on one part of this and go ahead and do your residential, I think you'd make a lot of money. And I think it would be really good for the area. So I want to throw that out to you because I think you would still get the same yield of the 417 you're trying to get. But I think that might be your best option because I've really tried hard to figure out a way to make this work. I really am pro-growth, especially up in District 1 because we're so needy for these things. But I really tried hard to wrap my head around it and figure out a way to do this. And I don't think I'm going to be able to support this tonight, but I want to hear what you have to say in case you came up with something witty. But I just want to let you know that I've tried really hard to make this work, and I just don't think the numbers are adding up as far as trying to protect this property and cause no harm.
Okay.
So
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Moya.
Okay. Guess I'm fighting kind of an uphill battle here.
At least you know what you're walking into.
I'm not a developer. I work for a lot of developers. The only thing I can say about multifamily in this area is what I've seen typically on the ones that we're doing is they tend to go in locations where there's something to support them, some activity. There's no activity in Sharps. There's no shopping. There's no restaurants. There's no bars. There's no nightlife. There's not really a whole lot going on in Sharps except for DOT and the prison. And I don't think that's the selling point. I don't know if that's even an option. I know this developer that owns the property, that's not what he does. He does single-family homes. That's what he's done for years. They're a family business, and that's what they do. The wetland quality, that's a new twist. I'm also not an environmental consultant, even though I own an environmental consulting company, but I have an expert that works for it that I wish was here. The code doesn't, this might be correct, this might not be, and I'm sure Darcy will correct me, but I don't think the land use, the comp plan or the code talks about quality. They just talk about function. It could be on a UMAM, it could be the top, it could be 10, it could be a 1. It's irrelevant. The impact rule is still 1.8. It could be the worst, most infested wetland possible and still be called a wetland, still not be able to be impacted or relocated or recreated in an improved condition. So maybe some of these are in really good condition. I mean, we have scattered wetlands. Some of them are isolated. Some of them are less than a quarter of an acre. I can't imagine that quarter of an acre wetland has any quality to it, especially when you surround it by homes. I would think the function is going to get lost. I would think the function of that quarter acre or those multiple quarter acre wetlands would best be served being adjacent and part of a larger system, where rather than having all these scattered half acre and quarter acre wetlands, we would have a nice 4 acre wetland system that would actually do something, that would create habitat and have some real function, as opposed to being surrounded by homes and just basically getting runoff from the yards. So I don't know the quality of the wetlands, and the code isn't specific on that, which I think is a shame, because you could actually create an improved wetland, but the code won't let you, at least the way it's being interpreted. And I think my argument was on the appeal, and was that it doesn't really define what an impact is. It doesn't define it. So it doesn't say you can't relocate a wetland. It doesn't say that if you have 3 acres of wetlands and you move it and you still have 3 acres of wetlands, that's a known. It doesn't say it's a no net loss. To me, it sounds like a no net loss. Sounds like it meets the code. But it doesn't say that you can't do that. It doesn't say you can, but it doesn't say you can't. So I guess it really depends on how you read the code. Is it permissive or is it restrictive? Which way do you guys look at codes? I understand, staff pretty much has to look at it more restrictive, because, and then that gives us the ability to come before you and appeal that decision, and it's happened more than once. So in this case, because this project is teetering on the edge of existence, we came up with this idea. How about if we just relocate the wetlands? Seems to make sense. The code doesn't say you can't. I don't believe the code says you can't do it. So that's why we're appealing this, because we're losing the viability of the project. And I think Sharps needs that shot in the arm. I think it needs something out there. I know the people across the street, they're dying to see this project come through, because they want neighbors. They want people to come. Because when people come and houses come, restaurants come, nightlife comes, commercial activity comes, all those things start to come, they're not there now. So we've looked at this thing several ways. I mean, we've redesigned this. We've looked at it every which way we can to make it viable. We looked at smaller lots, but there's no smaller product available right now. So I don't know if that's even all that important. I think the important part is I don't think the code is specific to say you can't relocate wetlands. And it doesn't talk about whether they're pristine. If we can go through there with staff and we could say, you know what, let's leave this one, but this one's not that good. We can move that. We can try to preserve the better ones. I think that makes sense because those are the ones that are going to cost us more to move and recreate. So we can work around those. As long as we can work around enough to make it happen, I don't think anybody gets injured here. So I don't see why it would be, your code would be restrictive. I mean, you guys are the only ones doing this. No one does this. Nobody else in the county has a code that restricts the amount of wetlands you can impact. Nobody. You know, and yeah, you talked about lawsuits because when we tried to change the code, when I was on the wetland task force, we tried to make changes, and the Sierra Club stepped in and sued the county, and now we have this. Whether they would sue because of this one little project, I don't know. I doubt it. I can't imagine they would. And I guess that's really, you know, where your
Do you
legal
know of
stuff
any other
comes in.
municipality that does this
No, not one.
in the entire state?
Oh, I don't know about the entire state,
Yeah.
but none in Brevard County.
Because you and I had this discussion, how many years ago? I mean, seriously,
Well,
this
yeah.
has been an ongoing discussion, and I've had this discussion with other people that have tried to do things, because you can have a wetland that's not even,
It could be garbage.
has no habitat at
Yeah,
all, but
it
it's
could be
considered a wetland.
landfill in a wetland, and you
Right.
could have to leave it.
Okay, I'm not sure whose lights, if they want to talk to Mr. Moya, or, okay, Commissioner Pritchett?
The
I'll have to
problem,
clear it when
part
it's-
of the problem with this is this property you're wanting to build on is really wet. It's very close to the river, and a lot of that runoff grabs the water and treats it before it ends up getting into the lagoon. It's really not far away from it. So you have a lot of complications going in with this. And then when I ran the numbers of mitigation, you're still coming up a little short, even the best case scenario. So I'm just telling you, I really tried on this. I just couldn't get it to work to be where I thought was going to work and not cause harm to the wetlands and the surrounding properties. But again, Mr. Moya, that area is blowing up. There's a school close by. All the Cape workers are starting to move in that area. There's a lot of development going on. And I really believe that, you know, if you put in an apartment complex, it's going to fill up, or a multifamily. I'm telling you, it's what's coming in. It's because the younger people moving in, and they don't necessarily want big homes or yards. They're looking for those types of places to move into, and there's a lot of those developments starting to go in to the north end. So I think you have got a very great piece of property here. And I think you're really going to develop something very nice. I think you guys are going to make some money, and I hope you do. I hope you get rich on what you develop.
Hope they do.
Me too. But I'm just not going to be able to approve this tonight, sir, and I really did try.
I understand.
Okay.
Commissioner Lober?
You ever see any of those cartoons or movies where they've got a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other? That's kind of how I feel at this point. I'm kind of conflicted as to how this goes. I'm not really sure which side represents the devil and which side represents the angel either. But as a general premise, my thought, not just with zoning, but with law in general, is do whatever the heck you want, provided it's not prohibited by some law or some rule or regulation. If there's some ambiguity as well, my thought with that as a general rule is whoever drafted it really is responsible for making sure that it's as direct and as clear as it ought to be, and it shouldn't be construed against the party that didn't draft it. So those are two general rules representing either the angel or devil, depending on how you want to look at it. I don't know whether I think this is ambiguous or not. I think it's one of those things that could be argued either way. On the other side, either with the halo or with the pitchfork, is my general premise that if it's a property-related issue, I'm going to defer, with the exception of this one item where Mr. Tabaya stated very bluntly, vote your conscience, and had he not stated that, I don't know that I would have voted the way I voted. My general rule is to support whatever the commissioner in whose district the project appears in whatever decision they have, even if I might not vote that way in my district. This is something where, were it in my district, I'd be more inclined to support it. I don't know that I would. I might. But given that she's against it and I'm equivocal, I just don't know that I can at this point. I apologize.
That's fine.
Does anybody have any more questions for Mr. Moya? Okay, the next speaker, Ms. Barr. And then you can come back up and rebut. I can give you some extra time because I think we did more talking than you did.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Name and address.
Mary Spar, 825 Clifton's Cove Court, Cocoa. This time I'm speaking for Sierra Club Turtle Coast Group. Watermark Investors is asking for a rather unorthodox definition of wetland impact, so that wetland impact would mean wetland filling minus wetland creation on site. This stark, simplistic, mathematical line of thinking does not acknowledge the complexities of Brevard County's attempt to achieve no net loss of wetland function. Furthermore, Watermark's suggested interpretation of wetland impact is not the intent of the words wetland impact in policy 5.2.E.1a of the comprehensive plan. Since at least 1995, the basic no net loss wording and the limitation on residential land uses in wetlands have been a part of the language. The language was expanded slightly, but not weakened as a result of the stipulated settlement agreement in 1999 between the county and Sierra Club, Audubon, and Florida Native Plant Society. Later, the words wetland impact were added to this residential policy as a result of the West Viera Comprehensive Plan Amendments negotiation, which was requested by Commissioner Mary Bolin Lewis and involved the Viera Company, Sierra Club, Audubon, Partnership for a Sustainable Future, and Florida Native Plant Society, with the county joining after preliminary discussions. The result was an amicable win-win for all, and during this negotiation, Viera attorney Jay Decatur asked if the policy could specify the exact percentage of allowable wetland impacts, 1.8%, to make the language more clear. This suggestion was favorably received by County Attorneys Scott Knox and Christine Valliere, and Viera attorney Duke Woodson, as well as others in attendance, since everyone wanted the language to be clear. The staff report with your agenda package explains the industry standard for wetland impacts as, quote, any dredging or filling of wetlands. I must say that since 1995, when I started looking at the wetland policies, I have never been aware of anyone who did not clearly understand what wetland impacts meant until this watermark appeal. Now, for years, commissioners urged county staff to coordinate with St. Johns River Water Management District on mitigation oversight to avoid duplication of effort. To address that concern, in 2003 or 2004, Comprehensive Plan Policy 5.3 was modified to clearly indicate that when the state approves the mitigation, the county just applies land use and density requirements of Policy 5.2. Watermark's unorthodox interpretation of wetland impact would result in duplication of mitigation adequacy evaluation, something very strongly opposed by many commissioners in the past. In conclusion, please deny this appeal. You could suggest, and it has been suggested, that Watermark consider adjusting the design of the project. Thank you.
Mr. Moya, did you have any rebuttal?
Yeah, I'm
think you have a
not
little
sure
longer
where
than
she
that,
got her definition from wetland impact, but it's not in the code. And it's not in your comp plan. It's just not there. There's wetland function, there's a definition for isolated wetlands, there's a definition for wetland function, no definition for wetland impact. It's just not there. So I don't know where she got it, and I don't know if it matters where she got it, because if it's not in your code, it's not in your code. So it seems to me it's subject to interpretation. And I don't personally, I don't even know where the quality of the wetland where that came from, because looking at the pictures and looking at the discussion from the environmental staff, there was no discussion on the quality of the wetlands. Maybe Darcy went to the site and looked at it herself. But if you've been out to the site's a dump. There's debris all over the place. It's been a dump site for years. And I believe, and I suspect that most of these wetlands were created because there used to be a digging operation on the site. And they probably took dirt, and now there's some low areas. So these are not, by any means, pristine wetlands. You know, we would definitely, if this passed, and I would show you pictures, but they're on my computer. I don't want you to take that for public record. So, but there's definitely clear evidence of debris, and that's just one picture of many. I mean, we would, if this got approved, we would work with staff and identify every wetland, the quality of it, the function of it, and then see if we can replace the function of it. It used to be done all the time. Historically, wetland recreation on site used to be used by developers. And it kind of, when mitigation banks came around and became available and became affordable, that option went away because it burdened the developer for a period of time and a cost to maintain that wetland. So it stopped being used. But it's not new technology. It's old technology coming back. It's been very effective. It's just cheaper and easier to buy wetland credits in a mitigation bank. It's just easier. So I still emphatically state that it doesn't define it in your code. It does not define it in your comp plan. And if it doesn't define it and it doesn't prohibit it, how can you not allow it? That's my case.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, Mr. Moy, I think the good quality wetlands is kind of just from me. It wasn't from staff, just because I know the area and it's really wet and it does a really good job of filtering a lot of that water. So that's just one commissioner's opinion on that, sir. It wasn't anything from staff, but it's just my opinion of the property. It is a really nice piece of property, but again, it's really close to the lagoon. When I got the numbers back from you, the amount that we were relocating and mitigating, there's just still some numbers off that I was trying to get wrapped around, and I just tried. But best case scenario, sir, and again, I'm not going to vote to put this through, but even if you got this through, there would be another issue of trying to figure out what to do with all the stormwater at this point, too, because I'm not sure how you would work the capacity. So it would have a lot of hurdles to get through. But again, sir, tonight, as far as changing the code to do this, I'm not going to vote in favor of this tonight.
Okay. If I could just explain one thing.
Certainly.
I understand I probably won't change your opinion, but currently that site is, as you saw, a dump. And it's basically whatever's rainfall and runoff is on that site is going through that debris, going straight into that wetland. What we would do is we would create stormwater ponds and route all the water to the stormwater pond that would get treated before it got discharged to the wetland. So the wetland would be accepting treated water instead of water that's going there now, which is going through all this debris and garbage and rusty tanks and everything else that's on that site. That's what it's getting now. It's getting worse water now than it would get in the post-development condition, where we would pre-treat the water, then we would hydrate the wetlands, and we would still not discharge any more water off the site than is going on now. Except what we would do is we would route that water to the big wetland where it could get even more treatment before it would finally outfall at the same rate or less than what's occurring now. So we would have large lakes with the houses, roads, drainage system going to the retention ponds. Then the Water Management District would make us rehydrate the wetlands with the treated water, so clean water going to those wetlands to actually enhance the function of those wetlands instead of polluted water going to those wetlands. And then it would discharge ultimately into wherever it goes now, into US 1 or the railroad track, wherever it goes, or Camp Road. So it would be an improvement than what's happening now. So,
I think you're going to have to do that anyways as you develop a little. Is the owner allowing people to dump on his property?
no, that's been there for years. That would be way
Okay.
before he bought that. This property's,
Do we need to do something to clear off some things off of it that shouldn't be there? I know you showed some things, I know people do that on empty property, but that might be something we should address.
a long time.
Yeah, we might need to address that later, but again, I did the math, and it still didn't come up with the full impact because there's 14.4 acres, and they were getting another number up. And in all fairness, sir, when y'all put this in, you were still going to go due diligence, and you came back and it just didn't fit. So, I mean, I get it. You tried everything to get this done, but I just don't think you're going to be able to pull that off on this property, sir. So,
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to support Commissioner Pritchett on this one. However, I do understand the predicament that Mr. Moya's client is placed within. It sounds as though that he or his client would be more than willing to deal with mitigation banking that most municipalities offer. I know I've even partaken in it when I purchased a piece of land. So it sounds like we're going to go with, option one. But I would like to add, I'd like to modify the comp plan and ordinance to make them consistent with the minimum standards set forth by the state and the St. Johns River Water Management District. If we did that in the future, I think that this probably would provide a great deal of benefit. It wouldn't do it immediately, and this is a time-consuming process, but at least it would stop us from being in this position next year, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. So I would ask that at least staff work on that and bring that back to us as an option to forego this in the future, Madam Chair.
I have a question. Are you requesting that we modify it not to require the 1.8% impact? Or is that, I just want to, for my own benefit?
The 1.8% is
a joke? Sorry.
Something made up by
Yes.
By us, and it's caused a great deal of concern to developers as well as all sorts of individuals. So the state, as well as St. Johns River Water Management District, has set up standards. I think that those are fine standards. If he's going to impact wetlands, then the state has set forth places where that mitigation can take place and monitor to make sure that those wetlands are well maintained. So is 1.8% a joke? Absolutely. Any standards that we set above, I believe, state and St. Johns River Management, or St. Johns River Water Management District are
Well, for the record,
unfair.
when I asked county staff about this before, and it wasn't Mr. Abate, but when I requested and asked why we did that, it was because the county staff said that they defer to us to make our own rules, is what I was told, which I don't agree with, and I don't believe that be the case. Because back when we had our roundtable, our builders roundtable, that was always a concern, because 1.8% of any property could stifle an entire development because somebody's got a puddle in their yard that somebody considers to be a wetland. So I agree with you, and I look forward to that coming back to us, and I support you on that measure.
Madam Chair, can I?
Sure.
Mr. Moya, if we could wave a magic wand, if there was a, I don't know, green light doctrine, would this solve your problem? If you were able to buy credits in a mitigation bank, would that alleviate the concerns that you are currently having?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I understand it's not immediate. Unfortunately, you sitting on that, whatever the wetlands, it would have been a lot more helpful had you. It sounds like you have a lot of friendly faces. I wish you would have brought this to our attention, earlier, because it was the first time I'd heard about it. But we can correct that problem now as we go forward. So, I'll just put this out there to make a motion, for discussion to deny the appeal and ask staff to bring back to modify the comp plan and ordinance to make them consistent with minimum standards set forth by the state and the St. Johns River Water Management District.
For our review.
Absolutely, for our review.
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Pritchett?
I love that. One of the questions I had asked staff is if this went through, they said it would have conflicted with St. John's. So I think this was a little aggressive with what was being tried, which hats off to you for, I tried to make it work too. So there might be another plea with something that's not so drastic. I don't know, sir, if you're hearing me on that. But I think that's probably something we need to look at and change as far as how much we mitigate. From what I heard too, you were on that board when they decided those numbers.
No.
No?
I was on the board, but those numbers did not come from that board.
Oh, okay.
That was part of the settlement agreement.
Okay. Okay, so that's all I had to say. So we have a motion and a second.
Okay, and if you guys are done talking, since I fundamentally and absolutely and completely disagree with the 1.8%, like I said, I've known about this problem at the county, that we, unlike any other municipality in our surrounding area, have this crazy restriction. And I can see, I know the intent is pure, and you want to make sure you're not impacting wetlands, you know, but I do agree with the premise that it isn't clear in our code. So with that, and it's not against the commissioner, but with the fact that I absolutely and fundamentally disagree, I would give anybody my approval on an appeal on anything that we have that has to do with our 1.8%, because I think it's absolutely abusive and restrictive and unreasonable, because you could have a small little parcel that you want to build anything on, and you're bound by that. So I don't agree with it. So I will not. I mean, I'll support the appeal, but the motion's on the floor to deny. So I guess I won't be supporting the denial.
Madam Chair, with that,
Commissioner Tobias?
Yes, I think those, if you're going to support one, I don't want to put you on the record against the second one, so I'm going to pull back mine, and we can separate these, because I think it'd probably be better for staff if we had a.
I'll let my second stand as to the second portion of what he was proposing. So as far as sending it to staff to come back with recommendations.
Okay, so yeah, I won't make the motion to deny, though I will vote for it, but I would like to make a motion to modify the comp plan and ordinance to make sure that they're consistent with minimum standards set forth by the St. John's Water Management District to being back for our
So that's
review.
your first one, your
That is
first
our
motion.
Yeah, that is our first motion.
And I'm seconding that.
All right, any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0 on that item.
Okay, I make a motion to deny.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett to deny, second by Commissioner Tobias. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Motion passes 4-1 for denial.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing under unfinished old business. New business, no public comment cards. So we'll move to board reports. Mr. Abate.
Just one item. I'd like to ask the board to cancel the budget workshop scheduled for March 21st. I think we've covered everything we needed to cover during our last budget workshop, unless the board
Do you need a motion?
desires to have it.
Do you need a motion on that?
Make a motion
Yeah, we
to
do.
cancel.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Bentley?
No report?
Ms. Pritchett?
No report?
Mr. Lober?
Just want to apologize for this coming Tuesday. I know it's going to run real late on account of a couple items I have on the agenda.
We're
So
going to
please
keep
bear
you.
with me.
We're going to keep you leashed up a little bit.
Fair enough.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On November 1st of last year, the board was presented with the North Merritt Island Small Area Study, the result of years of work by a group of dedicated volunteers in Merritt Island. The most critical recommendations made as part of the study were to amend the future land use map for those residents' agricultural properties more than 2.5 acres to Res 1 to 2.5. At the time, the Commissioner of District 2 opposed this recommendation, and it failed to get support from the board. We have now heard the evidence that shows the water in that area flows more like a river than an estuary, which probably supports the change. Most significantly, the citizens of District 2 have elected a new commissioner. So I'm asking this because of sunshine, and if this came up, I would not be allowed to speak with Commissioner Lober. So I know he posted this on his state site. I am just interested to hear Commissioner Lober's view on this and express my willingness to bring it back to the board for reconsideration if he has an opposing view from the previous commissioner.
I guess I'm on the spot.
You didn't know this was coming.
No, I did not know this was coming.
You're not responsible for answering if you don't.
No,
if you
I'm
want to
happy
look
to
into
answer
it.
it to the degree that I'm able to, and I don't know this is going to be the most direct answer in the world because I wasn't prepared to be asked the question. I will tell you, though, that this is something I'm still trying to get a full grasp of. I have a pretty good idea in terms of the situation up there. But as recently as this week, Mr. Denningoff and several other staff members and I went on, we call it a field trip, is that fair? A field trip about 3.5, 4 hours through North Merritt Island to look at the drainage situation. I understand that you may have taken that trip in the past, although I have no idea what you did or did not say during that trip. I just understand that you may have taken that trip. I've been going to just about every North Merritt Island HOA meeting. I've heard from the folks up there. I was at the North Merritt Island HOA meeting, I think it was this Monday, or maybe it was this past Monday, where they had both county employees addressing dredging, and then also we had folks from Florida Inland Navigation District addressing the dredge site in North Merritt Island. I do have concerns over the requirement with respect to compensatory storage. I think that fortunately or otherwise, the way that things have worked up there, and when I say up there, I mean north of the Barge Canal. In particular, I would say probably north of what Hall Road is probably where the flooding really becomes an issue for the most part, with some exceptions. We have a situation that's developed whereby land is there that is accepting water from adjacent property owners. From a fundamental sense of fairness, I don't know that it's the most fair thing to say to folks that are looking to develop and make beneficial, productive use of their land, hey, not only do we expect you to take care of all the water that falls on your property, but we also want you to take care of all the water that's historically run into your property. However, I think the circumstances in North Merritt Island, particularly north of Hall Road, are different enough that that general rule may need to be set to the side so that we address compensatory storage. As far as the acreage up there, I don't know that I'm as concerned with that as I am with the requirements with storing water that both has landed on a particular piece of property as well as that which has historically run onto that piece of property. I definitely don't want to see home sites smaller than an acre, but whether I want to bump that to 2.5, it's going to depend largely on what happens with respect to that compensatory storage. And I've been working with Mr. Denningoff, and by saying I've been working with him, I've basically been giving him a little bit of homework that he's been gracious enough to accept to look into whether our classification with respect to the or whether it's riverine or estuarine, I can't say that word, estuarine? Is that it? Is that close enough? Okay, let's go with that. To see which of those two seems to fit, because from the best I can tell, the system that we've had in place has been one that may have been put in place for reasons other than science. And I'd like to have whatever we do be supported by the facts and by the staff that we currently have. And if it's staff's opinion that the classification up there is not appropriate and may or may not ever have been appropriate, I would give great weight and deference to whatever staff's opinion is with respect to that. So I would ask if you have any plans with respect to that, please hold them for a little while. And by a little while, I mean perhaps 3 months, maybe, something in that ballpark. Because I'm actively working with Mr. Denningoff on this issue. It's not something I intend to let go, but I don't want to do anything impulsive. It is a big concern. It's a huge area of concern for me. It's a huge area of concern for some of my most vocal constituents, even if they're not the most numerous constituents. But I can assure you that we were having discussions as recently as this week as to whether or not an additional 24 or 30-inch pump would make a difference, because we have two 24s and a 12, or is that right?
We have two 24s, a 30, and an 18 that are all permanently installed. And we have additional portable pumps, two 24s and two 12-inch.
Okay, so I apologize, two 24s and two 12s for portable. And my understanding as well is ballpark, a 24-inch pump costs about $250,000?
Correct. It's probably higher than that now.
Okay, so we're certainly working on it. I can't give you a very firm answer that's directly responsive to what you've asked me, but I can promise you that those questions and more are going back and forth actively between Mr. Denningoff and myself. And part of it is, or has been, waiting to get more with respect to progress on that study in North Merritt Island. And I think we're receiving more, obviously, with respect to that. But I just ask you, if you have any plans or ideas with respect to that, please give me a few months to try to get better situated with Mr. Denningoff on that.
Madam Chair. Thank you. sounds like something will be coming out of your office. I didn't want to certainly preempt that. I just wanted to certainly lend my support.
I appreciate
as
that.
it comes from your district. I'm sure you're on top of it. I'm just letting you know that that's something that we dealt with quite a bit, and I'm a little bit incensed by the word impulsive, only because of the hard work that the North Merritt Island group had spent years and years and years. And I really, for their hard work, we were very kind and provided them with coins. So I would certainly like to get some help to their issues as we move forward. And I'm glad that you're on top of it and with Mr. Denninghoff. So I appreciate that.
Just real briefly, if I said impulsive, I'm referring to not doing something myself impulsively. You all have been here longer than I've been here, without exception, and you may have had ample time to wrap your head around the issue and to fully ventilate your opinion and to confer with staff, but I'm still at the process of doing that. So if there was any misunderstanding with respect to what I meant by impulsive, I'm referring to myself, not to anyone else sitting up here or to anyone else that's been involved in the process. So I apologize if there was some ambiguity in that.
Commissioner Smith?
No report.
And I have no report, so with that, I'll call this meeting adjourned.
Hooray.
It's our fastest one so far.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.